13, Kurt Warner.
It was a story that unfolded like a fairy tale.
You couldn't write it any better.
A lot of it isn't even believable.
But for Kurt Warner, the road to success was long and winding.
It was a waiting game. He waited a long time.
The frustration has to be tremendous.
He stood for years on the sidelines.
We'd go down and watch him hold a clipboard.
I had to swallow any sense of pride that I had.
Made you think that maybe it just wasn't meant to be.
He struggled to make it while working in a grocery store.
The blanket we ate on was the blanket we slept under.
There was a lot of people that thought he was holding on to the dream a little too far.
He kept hope alive while guiding his family through tragedy and sorrow.
I wouldn't have made it through without him being there for me.
He never let the light flicker.
Most people would have given up and quit.
Then a twist of fate put Kurt Warner at center stage.
Everyone looks at Kurt.
All of a sudden it was, who is this guy?
They told me, you're the starter.
He made the most of it.
Kurt Warner, he's been the savior.
Everything had came up to this point, everything he's ever worked for.
Kurt Warner, he's unbelievable.
Shoot, he never blinked an eye.
Warner goes over the middle, touchdown!
He always knew in his heart that he could do it.
Tonight, the journey of a Cinderella who went to the Super Bowl.
I never let myself think that I wasn't good enough to make it.
This is Kurt Warner.
Boy, what a story this is.
Beyond the glory.
Absolutely outstanding.
That is good that he's done on baseball.
Do you have anything to say to your fans?
He's a football hero who took a long, strange road to stardom.
It was one of those too good to be true stories, but it was true.
How difficult is it to take that route? Well, how many times has it been done before? You know, that's not difficult. It's never been done before.
Before the '99 season began, Kurt Warner was so unknown that his own quarterback coach had never heard of him. Then he set the NFL on fire.
29th touchdown pass of the season for Kurt Warner.
Passing for 4,000 yards.
The numbers are mind-boggling.
Completing 41 touchdowns.
This man has saved the season.
And leading the St. Louis Rams from the bottom of the league all the way to the Super Bowl.
He stands in the pocket, and he fires that football.
All he's done is throw touchdown passes.
His accuracy is phenomenal. His ability to get the ball out quickly is outstanding. What he sees and can respond to in terms of making decisions is absolutely outstanding.
He does his thing, and he does it over and over and over again.
He's velvet-covered steel. He keeps a real approachable personality and tenderness to him, but don't get fooled because he's steel underneath. He comes out to compete, and he's a winner.
On January 30th, 2000, with 2 minutes to play in the Super Bowl and the score tied, Kurt Warner stepped onto the field to complete his rendezvous with destiny and to take on the role he says he prepared for all his life.
2 minutes to go in the Super Bowl. Your team is tied.
The coach came up to me and said, this is it. You couldn't write it much better than this. And, you know, I just kind of smiled and went out of the football field.
Kurt Warner grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, a river town surrounded by cornfields. They call Cedar Rapids the city of 5 seasons, but for Kurt, there were only 2 that mattered: basketball and football.
All I did was play sports. That was pretty much my whole life, you know, back then, is just give me a ball of some sort.
He always wanted to do it from sun up till sundown, so it was a pretty big obsession of his.
This will be Warner rolling left. Whoa, my goodness.
Kurt's parents, Gene and Sue Warner, divorced when Kurt was 4 years old. After his father remarried, Kurt and his older brother Matt lived with their mom during the week, then traveled across town to stay with their dad's family on the weekends. Sports was the thread which pulled both families together.
He loved to compete. That was part of, you know, our life, really, growing up.
Our lives were basically wrapped around Kurt's sports life.
My dad was always there. My mom was always there. When I visited my dad, that was the first thing that we would go do. We'd go shoot baskets, or we'd go down to the park and play football.
With money tight, Kurt's mom rented a small house next to a fire station on a busy city street. The boys played sports with their friends in a nearby cemetery.
We didn't use the gravestones for bases or anything like that, but you know, where there weren't any graves yet, we were over there, you know, using it for our recreational spot.
There wasn't a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different things, so that's kind of the one thing that was easy. All you had to do was buy a ball, and then you could make your own games from there.
When Kurt was 10, his mom remarried, an unhappy union that soon ended in divorce. Those close to Kurt say the experience matured him beyond his years.
They were witness to a lot of things that you wouldn't wish your kids to necessarily, you know, have to go through. I think the boys grew up a little faster or a little deeper maybe than the average.
There were some trying times, some difficult times throughout that period.
It did force him into maybe a little earlier maturity to take on some of that responsibility, to be a little more protecting.
We were kind of the men's of the household with just mom there, so we had to, you know, take on some of those duties that probably normal kids, you know, 13, 14 didn't have to do.
When Kurt was a teenager, his mom enrolled him in Catholic Regis High. But Kurt says his true religion was sports.
I went to Mass every Sunday because my mom made me go to Mass. I was one of those kids that was daydreaming about the football game that I played yesterday instead of focusing on the scriptures.
If he could have majored in NFL quarterback, he would have, you know, because that's what he really saw himself doing.
And this will be 1 minute.
All kids grow up and they're like, you know, I want to dream of being an athlete. But there's something different when Kurt would say it. He, like, really believed it.
Kurt never lost his focus. He was an honor roll student who spent Friday and Saturday nights working on his jump shot.
I wasn't into partying. I really wasn't into girls. You know, I dated one here and there every once in a while, but my passion was sports.
He didn't date a lot. He'd just rather have a ball in his hand than a girl's hand, you know.
I could have gone out partying with 5 friends and enjoyed it, but I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as taking those 5 friends to the basketball court and playing a game with them.
Kurt's practice paid off. He became an all-state star in basketball and football and a natural leader who delivered in the clutch.
Beautiful throw. Warner couldn't have thrown the ball any better.
He figured his role as leader meant that if we didn't win, then it was his fault. He was always the guy that you counted on.
As a senior, Kurt was selected to play quarterback in Iowa's annual All-Star football game. He rallied his team to a fourth-quarter comeback.
Come on, guys, hard, hard. This is it, 4 minutes, let's push it.
And led them to victory.
Kurt Warner and going deep, got his man.
Kurt Warner, offensive MVP for this North unit. How the heck does this feel?
Oh, it feels great. You know, we've been working hard for 2 weeks. And, you know, we wanted to come out and play tough, and everybody did their part, and we came out a winner.
By now, Kurt was already plotting his path to the pros.
They had a dinner, and the guest of honor speaker, you know, was up there speaking, and he said, you know that there's only 3% of you will ever make it to the pros. And so a friend of ours said, so Kurt, what are you going to do after college? And he said, I'm in that 3%.
But Kurt's high school career didn't attract much attention beyond Cedar Rapids. Only one school, the University of Northern Iowa, offered him a football scholarship. Kurt figured the smaller school would give him the chance to show his stuff.
When I visited, we looked at the kind of offense that Coach Allen is going to be running, and it fits me perfect.
When he looked into the program at UNI, I think that he thought that he would be a good fit.
I felt, well, I can win that starting position. I can start for 4 years, and the future looks bright. But obviously it didn't work out that way.
Coming up, Kurt meets his match on the dance floor.
There was something about him that drew you to him, and it did me too.
And later, the hero takes a fall.
A very humbling experience to go from an NFL training camp to working in a grocery store for $5.50 an hour.
You're watching Beyond the Glory. Kurt Warner. You're watching Beyond the Glory. Kurt Warner. After starring on the football field in high school, Kurt Warner figured to do the same when he enrolled at the University of Northern Iowa in 1989. But UNI already had a starting quarterback in place, and the team was winning. Kurt never got a chance to play.
He thought that was the place for him, and it was, right on the bench. For 4 years, and it was a long 4 years.
Waiting on the sidelines year after year, Kurt's patience wore thin.
Contemplated, quitting, transferring, whatever it might be to give me an opportunity to play.
I said it builds character, and he says, I have enough character, Mother. I don't want any more character.
To cheer him up, a friend took Kurt to a local country music bar. Kurt says he hated the music, but he liked what he saw on the dance floor.
I saw this lady across the dance floor, or I should say on the dance floor, constantly with every guy in the place.
I just remember seeing this good-looking guy walk into the bar, and he always had a whole bunch of people around him. And they all happened to be female usually, but you could just tell he had a lot of charisma.
I think a lot of it had to do with that she was different. She had a background. She was much more interesting. She was a little bit older. Maybe I had matured through the years growing up and needed someone that was more on my level in that sense.
But Brenda Carney was no typical college girl. She was a former Marine, recently divorced and working her way through nursing school. She was also the mother of 2 young children, daughter Jessie and son Zachary, who was afflicted with near blindness and partial brain damage. She didn't expect a college quarterback to leap into their lives.
If I was looking for a father, I wouldn't have picked a 21-year-old football star at all. I was 25, divorced mother of 2. It doesn't seem to make sense at all.
But Kurt had other ideas. The day after they met, he showed up at Brenda's door.
I was just real protective about my kids, so when he showed up to meet them, it was scary for me, but something inside me just said, it'll be all right. It'll be all right.
You never go in thinking, I bet, she has 2 children. But I just felt, hey, what's next in line here? That I enjoy her, I like her, I think we could have a great relationship together.
So our dates were playing with the kids. He fell in love with them a long time before he fell in love with me, and I love that.
Friends and family were startled by the sudden change in Kurt's life.
The guy hardly ever dated, and then he did start dating somebody serious, and she had a family and stuff, but he was just like, oh, that's the best part. He's like, the kids are just fantastic. I just love them to death.
I was excited about something, at least at that particular time in my career.
As Kurt and Brenda drew close, Kurt's football career perked up as well. In the fall of '93, he finally got to start at quarterback and led UNI to the Gateway Conference title.
Trying to get out of trouble, and Warner's going to throw. It's close to the line of scrimmage, and this is a touchdown. I don't believe it.
I always felt that I could get out there if the opportunity ever arose and help lead our team and help to keep the team winning.
At season's end, the conference named Warner its Player of the Year, reviving his hopes of making it to the pros.
It was enough after that senior year to say, hey, I accomplished enough that I'm going to get a chance.
On draft day '94, NFL teams selected more than 200 college players. Kurt Warner was not one of them.
I can remember Kurt sitting in front of that television and, not too far from the telephone, waiting, like I suppose hundreds of other athletes, for that phone to ring, which it never did.
Kurt's hopes flickered when the Green Bay Packers invited him to their training camp. But the Packers cut him after 3 weeks. Kurt's football dreams had hit the wall.
Maybe you aren't going to do this for a living. Maybe you aren't going to play professionally. That was the first time that I had ever really given significant thought to the fact that maybe my career wasn't going to be playing football.
With no job and no pro prospects, Kurt moved with Brenda and the kids into the cramped basement of her parents, Jenny and Larry Carney. The Carneys made Kurt feel welcome, but he also felt embarrassed.
When you're living with the lady that you love and the 2 kids, it's not exactly how you want to, take care of them.
Here they've got Grandma and Grandpa and the boyfriend and Mom and 2 kids under one roof and trying to get along. And it was a full house.
I had no job. I had no money. We were living off of what Brenda was making from some aid she was getting for college to some food stamps that she was getting, and that's how we were pretty much living.
Kurt kept his football dreams alive by practicing each day at UNI, but dreams couldn't pay the bills, so Kurt applied for work on the night shift at the local Hy-Vee supermarket. The job paid minimum wage, $5.50 an hour.
I had to swallow any sense of pride that I had, and had to do it because it was something that was important to us as a family and me as an individual to take a step away from football and understand that some things are more important than playing professional football.
We came there one time, I think it was like a New Year's Eve, or something, and we drove up, and there he is stocking shelves, and we're all out partying and having a great time, and he was thrilled to have the job.
As the college star bagged groceries for his former fans, Kurt still believed that he could make it to the pros, but few shared his optimism.
If you're working in a grocery store and nobody's calling you on the phone, that the chances aren't real good that you're going to make it to that level.
There was a lot of people that thought he was holding on to the dream a little too far. He was dating somebody that had 2 small kids, and he better start thinking about that, and what's he going to do if football doesn't work out.
He just kept telling me he was going to be a pro football player, and I thought, okay, sure. And I'm going to be a model.
Kurt's football career had hit a dead end. His real journey was just beginning. Coming up, Kurt and Brenda withstand a shocking tragedy.
You have no clue until you go there and you see the devastation and you see the lives that have just been ripped apart.
As Kurt Warner stocked shelves in a Cedar Falls supermarket, his football career seemed all but over. And everyone knew it but him.
Everybody was wondering how much longer I was going to try to fulfill this dream. It was one of those things where I was like the last one to accept the inevitable. I didn't want to let it go.
While working at the food store in the spring of '95, Kurt got a call to join the Iowa Barnstormers, an arena football team that played its games on small indoor fields, surrounded by rowdy fans. It didn't look much like the NFL, but for Kurt Warner, it was the only game in town.
I'd seen 1 or 2 games at 2 or 3 in the morning and think, this isn't what I had in mind when I was talking about playing professionally. But they kept calling and nobody else did.
But once Kurt joined the Barnstormers, he got another rude shock. Arena League football was faster and tougher than he thought.
When I played my first game, and probably played the worst game that I'd ever played at the quarterback position in my life, the game was going 100 miles an hour. I couldn't complete a ball. I was terrible. It was going so fast that I actually thought to myself, maybe this game is too fast for me. Maybe I can't play this game.
But Kurt quickly adapted to the breakneck pace of arena football. In a league where the ball was thrown on nearly every play, he became a local star.
Arena football is fast. I mean, it's just fast, and it's a quarterback's game. 50 and 60 and 70-point games were nothing.
You're back there, and everything's going 100 miles an hour. And then when it clicks, everything seems like it's moving in slow motion.
But while Kurt's career was taking off, his relations with Brenda grew rocky. A devoutly evangelical Christian, Brenda pushed Kurt hard to probe deeper into his own faith. Kurt says he resisted.
I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to have any part of it. Still felt that the way I was raised and the things I believed in were good enough, when in essence, they weren't even close.
Kurt moved from Cedar Falls to Des Moines to play for the Barnstormers while Brenda and the kids stayed behind. At the same time, Brenda's parents moved to Arkansas and built their dream home in a peaceful, secluded valley.
It was difficult to see them move down to Arkansas, to leave the kids and to move away from where we were because we were so close to them and we loved them so much.
On April 14th, 1996, Brenda's dad celebrated his 54th birthday. Brenda called her parents to wish them well.
We called him on the phone and told him that we didn't get his gift sent, but we loved him. And I said, I need to know when y'all want the kids for the summer. And he said, well, your mother has a headache. We're supposed to get baptized tonight at the church, so we'll call you after that. And so when the phone rang at 10 o'clock is when then I thought my mother was calling me.
Instead, Brenda's sister was calling with terrible news. A tornado had just swept without warning through the valley where her parents built their home. The house was demolished. Her parents were killed.
I just remember hanging up the phone and thinking, I got to tell Kurt. And so I called him in Des Moines. That was a 2-hour trip, and screamed that Mom and Dad were killed, that I needed him, and I hung up.
I wouldn't even want to try to put it into words for Brenda, to lose her parents and the kids to lose their grandparents.
Kurt left the Barnstormers and flew to Arkansas to be by Brenda's side. The scene was devastating.
I don't think you're prepared to see the devastation a tornado can do until you see it. I remember thinking, maybe had they gotten in their van, that's solid enough that they would have been okay, and the van was destroyed.
My world was just rocked. I was a strong believer. I knew the Lord loved me, and He was powerful God. He created all of us, and yet this tornado came and took them. And it just wasn't fair. And I remember just keep saying, it's just not fair. It's just not fair.
In her darkest hour, with her faith deeply shaken, Brenda says Kurt gave her the strength she needed.
He didn't preach to me like I had been preaching to him 2 years before. He didn't preach to me, he just listened, and that's exactly what I needed.
I felt that my role was to kind of be the rock for Brenda. Not to tell her what to do or tell her how to feel, but just to be a shoulder for her to cry on.
He didn't tell me the Christian thing that, people try and comfort you with, that, oh, God took them up, or, God wanted them in heaven, and all that stuff that you think comforts people, but it didn't comfort me, and so he just listened.
After the funeral, Kurt accompanied Brenda and Kim to their father's favorite fishing creek to scatter their parents' ashes. There, for the first time in their 4-year relationship, Brenda brought up the subject of marriage.
We went down by the little creek bed there, and, she just kind of bluntly pointed out that it would be pretty stupid if we broke up and we didn't get married.
I just stopped and said, this is really stupid if you're not going to marry me, because I'll have this memory of him always being there at that time, and, is he even somebody I'll know in 10 years? And so I remember saying that, and he just looked me in the eye and said, don't worry about it.
Coming up, Kurt finds his personal salvation.
It was really then when I felt the Lord's presence in my life.
Then he finds himself in Sin City.
Everywhere you went, there was a temptation. Going to church, we had to walk through the red light district.
You're watching Kurt Warner, Beyond the Glory. Kurt Warner had helped Brenda Carney endure the shocking death of her parents by a tornado. In the aftermath of that tragedy, Kurt and Brenda say they grew stronger in their religious faith and in each other.
Killed the next 4 games, he threw 4 interceptions each game, and they just hated him. They wanted him benched. I had to hear all these awful things in the crowd, and I just knew what he was doing for me and how I wouldn't have made it through without him being there for me.
I wasn't playing very well on the football field. We just lost Brenda's parents. A lot of things were kind of going in the negative, but I had felt as calm and as peaceful as I had ever felt. And it was really then when I felt the Lord's presence in my life.
I saw him become the leader of our family then, spiritual leader of our family. instead of just learning from me, he took it on, and I was so thankful.
Kurt and Brenda decided to marry and to set an example for others in the way they lived their lives.
We had been living together, and we talked often about whether I should move out, whether we should, what we should do, because it wasn't lining up with what the Lord wanted us to do.
We know we love each other, we know we're going to get married, but there's just something that we need to do to show other people that we're committed to the Lord.
We've devoted our lives to God, and we're going to stay celibate, I guess you would say, for the time period that we made that commitment until we got married.
We slept in the same bed, but we decided nothing would happen for a whole year.
It wasn't easy, especially living in the same house and the things that we had done up to that point, but it was something that we felt committed to.
We were able to. It's amazing to me, but I wouldn't want to do it again.
In October of '97, Kurt and Brenda married in Cedar Falls, Iowa.
I love you.
Soon after, Kurt officially adopted Brenda's children. There was more good news. After 3 years in the Arena League, Kurt finally got an offer for an NFL tryout with the Chicago Bears. But while honeymooning in Jamaica, Kurt got an insect bite on his throwing elbow that swelled to the size of a baseball. His tryout was all set, but Kurt Warner couldn't move his arm.
I had to call him and say, I can't. Something bit me, a spider or a centipede or whatever bit me on my honeymoon and I can't throw. And they're just on the other end just going, this guy is just making things up one after another. I mean, does he expect us to believe this? And then I never heard from him again.
Kurt figured he'd thrown away his last ticket to the NFL. But in November of '97, he got an offer to play with the Amsterdam Admirals in NFL Europe. So Warner flew off to Amsterdam. For a newly devout Christian, he says the scene was an eye-opener.
What better place to give me that test and give me that challenge than to put me right in the middle of where sex and drugs and alcohol are priority number one.
Kurt says the route from his apartment to his church ran directly through Amsterdam's red light district.
There was times where I'd see guys from my team in the middle of the red light district, and the next day at practice, that's all I'd hear. Oh, Kurt was in the red light district. But I knew that there was a reason I was there, and that was to move on through and to get to church.
But Kurt had more than Amsterdam's social scene to worry about. Back home in Iowa, Brenda was pregnant with their first child together and had just received deeply disturbing news.
I got my results back from my first pap smear for my pregnancy, and I had what they considered cancer. And, it was just, I kept thinking, life is so unfair.
Doctors decided to put off further tests until after the baby was born.
It was difficult to know what she was going through and to justify the fact that I was over somewhere by myself playing football. We did a lot of praying together at that time to help us both through the situation, but definitely feel she had it much tougher than I did.
Warner played well enough in Amsterdam for the St. Louis Rams to invite him to their training camp in the spring of '98. Kurt figured it was his best chance to make it to the NFL, and maybe his last. The decision came down to the final day of practice.
They sat down the night before they made the final cut and sat down as coaches and kind of talked over who the different coaches felt we should keep and why, and fortunately for me, they chose me.
Kurt's prayers were answered in more ways than one. As he began his first season with the Rams in the fall of '98, Brenda gave birth to a healthy son they named Cade. When doctors examined Brenda after she gave birth, they found no evidence of cancer.
The doctors say that pregnancy can result in some weird testing, so that, accounted for the bad pap smear, but we believe that God healed us. So, you can take whatever you want, but we know in our heart that we prayed for healing, we believed for healing, and it happened.
The Warners believed they'd been blessed by a miracle. Kurt would soon fashion a miracle of his own. Coming up from the sidelines to the Super Bowl.
People were incredulous that we could go with this guy.
Warner goes over the middle. Touchdown!
You're watching Beyond the Glory. Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner made it to the NFL in the fall of '98 and hardly anyone knew it. The Rams played miserably that season and Kurt barely played at all. When quarterback coach Mike Martz joined the Rams the following spring, he says he'd never heard of Kurt Warner.
This young man walks in my office and says, "Hi, Coach, I'm Kurt Warner." Well, I had no idea who Kurt Warner was. You know, I thought he was a tight end or maybe he's somebody that worked there. I don't know, you know. He leaves the office and I walk next door to Mike White and I said, who's this guy? Who's Kurt Warner? You know, what's he about?
Kurt was easy to ignore. St. Louis had just signed free agent quarterback Trent Green to a $16 million deal. And with Green calling the shots, the Rams suddenly looked like a team transformed.
Green going long for Isaac. Oh, yeah. Touchdown, St. Louis Rams.
You know, it was really clear from the beginning that, you know, Trent was the guy.
He was a real field general, and he just could march a team down the field and handle the pressure, the blitzing, the dogs, the different things that went on.
The way he came in, the way he performed, the way he showed off this offense and what could be done within this offense, I think Trent really instilled the confidence in our whole football team.
Green and Warner soon grew friendly as they practiced together each day. The star quarterback and the unknown understudy discovered they had much in common.
There's a mutual respect there and a mutual admiration for the types of things that we can do on the field, and I think we're very similar people off the field as well.
We knew that Trent Green was an awesome quarterback. And then you watch Kurt, and he really looked identical to Trent in a lot of ways.
I understood my role. I knew I came in as the backup, and I was excited about just the possibility of being a backup. So, you know, it was by no means a threatening situation where I was going in trying to outperform Trent.
Green with a quick release. Isaac Bruce and Trent Green combined for 22 yards.
With all eyes on Trent Green, few outside the Rams noticed how well Kurt was performing as Trent's backup. Then 2 weeks before the season began, disaster struck.
Whoa! Oh, my goodness, we've got Trent Green down.
Oh, it was immediate, yeah. As soon as I knew I was done for the year, yeah.
And Green went down hard and is not getting up.
And the crowd, you could have heard a pin drop. And I could tell from the sidelines that there was a lot of thoughts from all the players about what was going to happen.
Everything looks like the Rams are starting to head in the right direction, and now there's a tragedy, really, and wow, what's going to happen?
With their season on the line, experts assumed that the Rams would trade for a proven quarterback to replace Trent Green. Instead, head coach Dick Vermeil stunned the football world by announcing that the team would place its fortunes in Kurt Warner's hands.
We will rally around Kurt Warner, and we'll play good football.
People were incredulous that we could go with this guy. They couldn't understand that. You know, how can you do that?
It all happened so fast that nobody really had an opportunity to sit back and analyze this and say, do you realize what's happening here?
Kurt's always wanted this opportunity. He said, just give me the chance. And I was kind of like, well, he's got a shot now. You know, he better step up to the plate.
I guess it was at that point it really kind of sunk in. As of right now, you know, I'm the starter for the St. Louis Rams.
Kurt Warner had waited a lifetime for the chance to show that he could play football with the best of them.
And the Rams with the 28-year-old Kurt Warner.
Then he set to proving it.
Kurt Warner's at the center. The guy who never started a game in the NFL.
In the Rams' first 4 games, Warner filled the air with footballs.
Warner, good protection, fires downfield, touchdown!
Firing bullets across the middle.
Watch this throw.
Unleashing deep bombs.
Kurt Warner, he's unbelievable.
Completing 70 passes in 4 games.
He's been the savior.
Including 14 touchdowns.
Warner, touchdown, St. Louis Rams.
The Rams won them all.
Everything is going right for the St. Louis Rams.
People started to take notice, you know, and started to say, hey, this team's for real. And from that point on, instead of going into the games thinking, we can win this game, we went in thinking, we're going to win this game.
Suddenly, the St. Louis Rams were the talk of the town, and Kurt Warner was at the center of a media blitz.
They wanted to know, is this guy for real? When is this magic going to end? When is he going to quit passing for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns in these games? Everybody's wondering, when's this going to stop? And when it doesn't, week after week, and they think this is too good to be true, and then people start to get to know the kind of guy Kurt is, the kind of person he is, and the path he's taken to get here. It was inevitable that the city and even the country was going to fall in love with the guy.
Nothing shook Kurt Warner. He and the Rams rolled through the season and the NFC playoffs.
That same play, is it ever?
He was a guy who lived a dream, knew he was, and showed he was.
Kurt brought an air of confidence around her, like, listen, guys, we are the best team in the NFL. We should be in the Super Bowl. We're going to go to the Super Bowl. We're going to win the Super Bowl.
The Tennessee Titans square off with the St. Louis Rams. Super Bowl 34.
On Super Bowl Sunday, Warner took off like a rocket, leading the Rams into position to take the lead. But just before halftime, he took a shot to the ribs that left him reeling in pain.
He was in a lot of pain, his ribs. He'd been hit quite a bit, and he was really struggling.
I was worn out, I was beat up, and it was just one of those situations where it's just like, leave me alone, tell me when it's time to go out for the second half. I'm fine, I'm going to play, you know, don't ask me anything, just tell me what we're going to do and let's go out and do it in the second half.
Ignoring his pain, Kurt fired a third-quarter touchdown to stake the Rams to a 16-point lead.
Into the end zone.
But Tennessee came roaring back, and with just 2 minutes left to play, they kicked a field goal to even the score at 16 all.
2 minutes to go in the Super Bowl. Your team is tied.
Now, as 33 million fans looked on, Kurt Warner stepped back onto the field. The game, the season, and his legacy all hanging in the balance.
Kurt Warner comes into a situation that every kid dreams of, Al.
And it just kind of flashed to me like, well, here's my opportunity, my moment to lead my team to victory.
Warner to throw. Going deep downfield, adjusting for it is Isaac Bruce. And Isaac Bruce threads his way for a touchdown. 73 yards.
I just remember seeing the ball go up, and I glanced and was able to see him catch it. And then beyond that, I couldn't see anything. And just heard all the fans screaming and yelling. And by the time I got up, he was in the end zone.
The Rams hung on to win the most thrilling game in Super Bowl history.
And the Rams have won the Super Bowl.
And Kurt Warner was voted the most valuable player.
It was the perfect ending to this whole Warner fairy tale.
And we're world champions. How about the Rams?
Kurt Warner had delivered the game-winning pass. Now he would deliver a very different message. Coming up, Kurt talks the talk.
All things are possible.
And walks the walk.
The message is credible because the man's credible.
You're watching Beyond the Glory. Kurt Warner. Winning the Super Bowl turned Kurt Warner into an instant icon. But once the game was over, Kurt used his celebrity to deliver a testament to his faith.
When Mike Tirico was up there and interviewing me, and he said, well, first things first, Kurt, let's talk about the past. And, you know, it was a perfect opportunity to say, no, the past isn't first.
First things first, did you say anything before you guys went out for that play?
Well, first things first, I got to give the praise and glory to my Lord and Savior up above. Thank you, Jesus.
It was just kind of the perfect situation for me to proclaim my faith to everybody, to make that statement for the whole world to hear, and something that I was going to live by for the rest of my life.
Kurt has made special efforts to broadcast his feelings about faith to a wider community. Shortly after his Super Bowl triumph, he returned to the Trans World Dome in St. Louis and spoke to a crowd of 25,000.
Who do you want pushing your wheelbarrow? Do you want to do it, or do you want Jesus doing it?
I went with Kurt at an airport, and a guy asked for his autograph, and he signed a scruffy old envelope, you know, and I got this idea, why don't you print up a card that has your story about your faith in Jesus on the back, and it just took off. And in under a year, we printed 4 million of them.
If they don't want to hear it, they can turn it off or don't read it. But if we're going to talk, you're going to know that we're here because we want to tell you about the Lord. Plain and simple.
That's what Jesus is asking us to do. He said it's not enough just to believe. You got to be willing to give your life for him.
Warner knows that speaking about religion puts his own life under closer scrutiny. He says he welcomes the challenge.
It holds me accountable because I'm accountable to all those people and all those kids and everybody that's watching me every Sunday or every opportunity that I get to be in front of a camera, that people are watching, both skeptics and Christians alike.
Following his Super Bowl season, Warner signed a $43 million contract with the Rams and showed he was worth it by having another All-Pro year in 2000. But those closest to Kurt say he's unchanged by fame and fortune.
Football's just a little thing on the scale of life to Kurt. There's a lot more things that are more important to him. You know, starting right there at home in St. Louis and his family. I mean, they're number one.
There's nothing like having a family, and there's not any accomplishment, anything in the world that I would ever trade for having the family that I have.
He's out driving his son around in the yard on the tractor, spending time with him, and he'll be doing that at the pool or playing basketball or video games. His place is meant for his kids to be able to have a good time with him.
I may be able to do something special on a football field, but when it comes to being at home, you know, I'm just Dad.
Kurt Warner is a football star who believes in the divine power of miracles. Through his devotion to faith and family, he's made his own dreams come true.
He's never wavered in his belief about his abilities and what he's sure to do. He's never wavered.
Just as the disappointments and the struggles, the successes also carve, you know, him as a person.
Not only does he talk the talk, but he walks the walk, and I mean, he's just as real as you can get.
I believe that we're all in this life together. And this family, we're all in it together. And when you take that one step farther to the team, we're all in it together. And the community, we're all in this thing together. And so we can do great things as long as we work together and we work to accomplish things as a family. We're all going to feed off each other and build something great. God bless you all. Thank you for coming.
For more information about Beyond the Glory, go to foxsports.com.
Infinite Justice. We have some idea who will be shipping out and when. We don't know where they're going exactly and what they'll do when they get there. And in Washington today, Alan Greenspan counsels Congress on how to keep the American economy from becoming a casualty of America's new war. Good afternoon again, everyone. I'm Aaron Brown in New York as our coverage continues on a wet Thursday here in the city. Judy Woodruff in Washington joining us as we go along. Nick Robertson is in Pakistan today as we begin our coverage this afternoon there. Nick, can you hear us?